Well, good morning. How are we doing today? Can anyone say Happy New Year? Better New Year. I kind of like that. That's pretty good. Who was in bed by 10 o'clock on New Year's? Yeah. Oh, 7 o'clock. That's an early one. My kids were in bed by 7:30. We're like, we ain't doing this. Yeah, so this was the first New Year's that, well, I would say fourth in a row that we haven't made it till midnight. But I'm sleeping in my bed. Me and my wife went to bed at like 10:30 because we have little children. And then all of a sudden at 11:30, I'm like, dude, there's a war going outside my backyard right now. I felt the heat. I'm like, how close is this? And then there was about a 2.5-hour party of fireworks, so that was real fun. So thank you for all the fireworkers. Billy, maybe you contributed, I don't know. But it was a great start to the year, and we are excited that you're here, both in person or if you're watching with us online, because I believe, man, new year is new possibilities. And in a new year, kind of starts, and usually what comes with that is let's make some resolutions. Maybe I want to eat better, I want to exercise more, I want to lose some weight, or I want to get in church more, I want to read my Bible more. But if we're being honest, I feel like 2021, the standard has changed. We're like, forget about this New Year's resolution of bettering ourselves. Let's just get back to where we were, right? Let's get back to the normal. Can our world feel like there is some semblance of normal, like we recognize something? And as crazy of a year as this has been, we're ready to turn the page and look forward. Now, I'm probably sure as I say that, you're like, absolutely. And you're like, let's not say the word 2020 anymore, right? It almost sounds like a bad word at this point. Like, you're like, I'm sick of hearing about 2020. I'm sick of hearing how terrible of a year it was. I'm sick of talking about this. But before we move on, I think we need to look at what we faced. So I want to look real quick of why was 2020 so terrible? And I want to give you 3 reasons real quick, and then it's going to lead us to jump into our passage, and I think really what God has for us this next year. But why was 2020 so terrible? And I think the first reason why it was so bad was we experienced widespread adversity like we never have. You see, as we reflect on and we see kind of a global pandemic happen, I don't think ever in our lifetimes of what you can remember and of people watching have we experienced something on a worldwide scale to cause so much hardship in our worlds. We even survived through some of the things we've read in history, like the Spanish flu and like World War II, World War I and II. In this last year, it rocked our worlds. And it started as a global pandemic that led into economic struggles, that led into personal struggles of people losing their jobs or being laid off or not being able to work. And then this has led to what I think we're really going to struggle with more and more coming into this year, of leading to depression and mental illness and addictions that have skyrocketed through the roof. And now we got to pick up the pieces after the fact. There's been widespread adversity that honestly we haven't seen. And maybe you're like, 2020 was great for me. But you look around, and maybe you don't have any neighbors to see because they're all hiding right now. But you look around our worlds, and it's still in disarray. But not only is there widespread adversity, but here is where I think contribute to this even more, is there's a lack of clarity and authority. You see, there's a lot of voices out there saying this is what we should do. We should wear a mask, we shouldn't wear a mask. We should quarantine, we shouldn't quarantine. It's going to last this long, it's not going to last this long. And everyone thinks they have all the answers, the experts, and it's like, we don't know. And there was no clear answer about let's take this direction and it'll all go away in a couple months, but it's become fuzzy. It's become hard. There's no leader standing in front of everyone saying go this way and everything will be fine, because we don't know what that is. And then not only was there not a clear answer, but there wasn't one authoritative voice from a man or a woman that's saying, let's go in this direction. Some followed our current President Trump, some followed the one to come and the Democrats. And then it's like, if you think either has the full answer, we're kidding ourselves. You see, there's no clear answers. There was no authoritative voice to say, let's go this way, and all the struggles will be gone. And all these things led to this widespread adversity, this lack of clarity and authority. It was a sobering reminder of our mortality. You see, we've lost a lot of people in this prior year. People around the world have died. And maybe people close to you have as well. Man, I have heard of countless friends and of pastors and of people in my sphere of influence who have passed away or are sick or are struggling from this. And then even if you take COVID out of the equation, we've seen this on a grand scale. 2020 was so crazy that not only personally in our lives, but globally, when you look in the public sphere, we saw some huge deaths this year. For example, in 2020, we saw the deaths of Kobe Bryant, of Alex Trebek, of Eddie Van Halen, of Sean Connery, of Chadwick Boseman, of Gale Sayers, and then just recently from GCU and Suns legend Paul Westphal this past week. You see, all of this has been a sobering reminder of how fragile our world is and how fragile our personal lives are. Now you hear this and you're like, this is a super bummer. Like, we just got out of this great worship set. I was getting too jazzed. I got to always calm myself down. I'm like, I'm going to be out of breath by the time I get out there. And you hear all this, you're excited, new church, new me, new year. And you're like, this is depressing. But we got to see where we've been if we're going to see where we're going to go forward. And you see, it's been a tough year. But I think that looking at that, reflecting on it, seeing why that was the case gives us the answers on what we need going forward. So what does our world need in 2021? Well, you're answering already. You want to come and preach? I'll just switch with you. But we saw last year, and we actually studied through this last series we just wrapped up. It was called Holiday on Its Head. And we studied through Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It was a great passage where Jesus goes up on a mountain, and he gives this message and just lays down truth after truth after truth. And in this, he's kind of flipping their worldviews upside down. He's saying, here's how to have a blessed life, but it's not what you think it is. Here's how you follow the law. You think you're doing it, but you're failing in so many areas. He's saying you think you're a good person, but your heart's not in the right place. And Jesus is attacking their worldviews and breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down. But as he goes, he kind of wraps it up and he looks at what we saw last week about these foundations. He's saying, what is the spiritual foundation you're going to build from? And he gives kind of two actions, or we can hear and act on God's word, or we can go do it our own way. And you see, after Jesus displays this authority, as he says to hear and act on his word, then he gets down off the mountain and he gets to work. So if you have your Bible, we're going to pick up right after this in Matthew chapter 8. And today we're going to kind of skip through Matthew chapter 8 and chapter 9. And we're going to see, what did Jesus do as soon as he gave this greatest sermon you could ever imagine, you could ever think of? What did he do immediately after? And I think when we kind of dissect this, we're going to see, what does our world need in 2021? And does our world, for example, need to hear and act on the word of God like we said? And the answer is absolutely. And I think he gives us a little bit of, what does that look like? How does that kind of translate to us today? And I think the first thing we see that we need in 2021 is to find healing. Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 1. Let's read this together. He says this, that when he came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. Right away, a man with leprosy came up and he knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Reaching out his hand, Jesus touched him, saying, I am willing, be made clean. Immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. Now, it's kind of cool how this jumps right in. It says Jesus, he gives this sermon, he displays his authority, he shows how great of a teacher is, and then he comes down off the mountain. And right away, I love that language in verse 2, right away, the crowd was coming. And right away, a man who was sick and had leprosy was like, I need to go talk to that guy. And as he runs to Jesus, he's acting on it right away. He's not saying, I'm not going to miss my opportunity, but he goes and he runs and he takes his chance. You see, often I think this is the opposite of how we react to God. Often I think we can react to God within the boundaries of our own life and what is comfortable for us. You see, in America, overall, we're doing pretty well. Overall, we have a lot of worldly blessings and comfort that we live within. And when it comes to God, I think we can be like, well, I'll try out church one day, or I'll try it out for a little bit and see how I like it. I'll see if it meets my needs. I'll give this God a try. Maybe I'll read the Bible once in a while. But there is no urgency. And so often we can kind of push God to the side. Maybe we make him a New Year's resolution, try it out for a little bit, but then it's just like our gym membership and it gets neglected in 2 weeks, right? And we say I'll add God when it's comfortable for me, when I can add him on. But here's why I'm so encouraged. Because in tragedy, often it accelerates the holes in our lives. And as we saw in 2020, that it revealed some gaping holes that we need to deal with. When we look at around our world and we see widespread adversity of job loss, of mental illness, of addictions, of hurt and in needing of help all around us, it shows us that we need some healing in our life. And you see, the leper knew he was sick. He could see his body decaying. He could see everyone push him to the outskirts where he wasn't welcomed in. And he knew he needed healing in his life if he was ever going to move forward. And he jumped to Jesus right away. But you see, he wasn't actually the only one. We see another story just down to verse 5 where it tells us of a centurion. And a centurion was like a Roman official in the army. He had people who reported to him, and he was a man of authority in his place. But he actually goes to Jesus and he says, "Hey, I have a servant who is paralyzed. Will you heal him?" And Jesus kind of asks him, almost maybe facetiously, like, "You want me to come, drop everything I'm doing right now and come see you?" And he's like, "Do you want me to come with you and heal him? Like, what do you want?" And the centurion's like, No. Just say the words and he will be healed. And in verse 13, this is what Jesus says. He said that Jesus told the centurion, "Go, as you have believed, let it be done for you." And his servant was healed that very moment. You see, the centurion showed faith. He showed faith that Jesus didn't need to go straight to his house, but I think there is also this urgency of he's saying, "My servant needs to be healed now. Will you do it? God, please, Jesus, come into his life and change his way." And he did it. And lastly, we see another story in chapter 8, verse 14, where it says, Jesus went into Peter's house. And he saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. So he touched her hand and the fever left her. Then she got up and she began to serve him. When evening came, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed. Listen to this. He drove out the spirits with the word, and he healed all who were sick. Verse 17, so that what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. He carried our weaknesses, or he himself took our weaknesses and carried our diseases. You see, I don't think it's an accident. The first thing that happens after Jesus teaches and after Jesus gives this amazing message and reveals all the sin that is in the crowd's lives of everyone who is listening, as they listen to this sermon, they're like, "Oh, I got some baggage in my life that I need to deal with." And the first thing Jesus does is he gets off the mountain and he starts healing people in their lives. And I think in 2021, we need to heal. There is something in all of our lives, some sin that maybe has been accelerated and brought out more. You've been with your family more. You can't escape them, and you realized your marriage wasn't as good as it was, or you realized your kids aren't as nice as they were when you got to send them to school, and something happened in 2020. You probably some way revealed, "Oh, there's some parts of me I don't like." And the first thing we need to do is we need to bring it to Jesus. We can't heal it on our own. But just like the leper couldn't heal himself, he couldn't just make leprosy go away. Instead, he ran to the God who could. And you see, the solution to all of it is looking to Jesus and his church to heal. You know, one of the reasons I love that we have a Celebrate Recovery ministry is for this point exactly. As we've had this ministry for a little over, I think, a year and a half, and Dave, our Celebrate Recovery pastor, has done an amazing job of it is a place where we can come and we can begin to heal. It's not going to fix you. It's not all of a sudden like you just show up to Celebrate Recovery. It's like, here's a pamphlet, go do it, and you're great. But it's walking hand in hand of saying, I'm broken, I'm messed up, I got issues in my life, and I need God and I need other people to help me out of it. You see, we need to begin to heal, but this will lead to our next need we have this year, which is to follow humility. Skip down to verse 18 of Matthew 8, verse 18. It says this, that when Jesus saw a large crowd around him, he gave the order to go to the other side of the sea. A scribe approached him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." In verse 20, Jesus told him, "Foxes have dens, and birds of the skies have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." You see, two things happened here is as the crowds approached, the first thing Jesus said was told his disciples, "Let's get out of here." Okay, this is getting a little, it's social distancing didn't happen then yet. But he's like, there's too many people around. This is getting crazy. This is blowing up. Let's go to the other side of the sea. Let's ditch the posers right now because we know these guys really are just kind of in it, probably for the hype. But let's get out. So he kind of pulled himself away. And then two, someone asked him of I want to follow you. And he gave a realistic expectation of what it's going to look like. He's like, hey, it's not going to be, rainbows and butterflies and awesome. It's going to be tough. We're not going to have anywhere to lay our head. We're going to be roamers. We're going to be going around. This is going to be a hard lifestyle. And the guy's like, oh, I didn't sign up for that. All right, I'm out. But you see, why is this important? Because think about this for a second. What if Jesus was a politician? And what if Jesus gave a great sermon and a great campaign speech, and the first thing when he comes down off a mountain, do you think he's going to say, let's get away from the crowds? No, a politician is going to be like, hey, follow me. Hey, vote for Jesus 2020, right? He's like, hey, getting all the press, soaking up all the energy, saying yeah, I'm awesome. Here's the future we're going to have, and just start, throwing out vaccines and money and rainbows and butterflies. And it's was going to, instead of Jesus increasing his popularity at this time, he's like, no, he went away. He humbled himself. He kind of drifted in the shadows. And he gave a realistic expectation of what it's going to look like to follow him. You see, in 2021, I think we need to be careful about who we're hitching our wagon to and who we're following and let's speak into our lives. Because too often we can follow people who are more interested in building up their brand than loving and caring for the people around them. And you see, Jesus here wasn't interested in that. He was interested in loving and healing and helping people, but not in starting a big parade and a movement around him. The movement would actually start and really come after he was off the scene. And that's one of the reasons that I love Cross Church, is we don't try to platform any leaders. One of the things I love is that we are a small church, but we are full of a lot of different leaders that lead different ministries. And there are a lot of things that I don't have my hand in and that I have no clue about. Someone asked me a question this morning. I'm like, I don't know. Go talk to Josh. He has all those answers. And it's why even I don't preach every week. I mean, yeah, I get other guys that make me even look more like 15. But that's why you see Dave and Scott and other people, because it's not about us. And it's not about following me. Because if you start to follow me, you're going to be super disappointed. You're going to be like, he really does 12 years old, right? And you're going to be so disappointed. But it's about us pointing to a God follow together. And you see, Jesus here showed us that mentality, showed us that spirit of humility. That it is not about following the crowd, it's not about gaining the crowd, but it's about truly looking out and helping people. But check out, this humility is further displayed in chapter 9. Flip over to Matthew chapter 9, starting in verse 9. It says this, it says that as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the toll booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. Verse 10, while he was reclining at the table in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and his disciples. This was a religious no-no. They were with people that don't associate with those people. They're not going to help your brand. They're not going to help you be more popular. They're not going to make people like you and the religious crowd like you. They're going to ostracize you. And this is who Jesus was hanging out with. In verse 11, it says, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Verse 12, now when he heard this, being Jesus, he said, "It is not those who are well who need a doctor, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I didn't come to call the righteous, but the sinners." You see, Jesus was as real as it gets. He wasn't interested in promoting his brand. He wasn't interested in rubbing hands with the people with the money or the people that would help him get out there or get him ahead. He was interested in truly caring and loving about the world around him and the people there. You see, in 2021, I think we need to find healing. I think we need to follow true humility. And I think this all kind of leads to us. We also need to farm holiness. Check out chapter 9, verse 35. This is how Jesus kind of closes out this section. It says, Jesus continued going around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dejected, like sheep without a shepherd. Verse 37, then he said to his disciples, listen to this, the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. You see, Jesus looked out on the crowds and he saw the potential. He saw the harvest that was in front of him. And as he looked at people, he saw the brokenness, he saw the struggle, but he also saw the potential that was to come. And you see, when you farm, which I'm learning more about right now as we're creating our garden, but when you farm, you not only sow seed, but then when it starts to grow and it comes to fruition, you have to then reap that seed. And when the harvest comes, there must be workers there ready to collect the harvest. And you see, Jesus is telling his disciples here that he sees the pain of the world around him. He sees that their hearts are waiting to hear the words. Their hearts are waiting for their hope. Their hearts are waiting for something greater because they've tried the world and it's failed them miserably. And he's saying, we gotta be ready. You see, there is a need for more workers to share this message that Jesus was giving here. And we are coming out of the hardest collective year that we said that most of us had experienced in our lifetime. And one of the things that is most encouraging about here is in 2021, I think we're going to have the opportunity to share Jesus into people's lives maybe like we never have before. Because in tragedy, people are looking for something better. In tragedy, people are realizing their lifestyle is not working, and they're ready to hear truth and hear hope and hear God's message. And you see, I'm praying and I'm hoping and I'm expectant that we're going to see a resurgence of God's kingdom in our cities this year. Which leads to kind of this key thought as we kind of talk about what does our world need in 2021. And this year, I think our world needs exactly the same thing that we've needed every year, and it's to know Jesus. Here's the deal. We're not rethinking everything. We're not changing our mission statement. If you've been here at Cross Church, we say it all the time. We are about making Jesus known. And none of that's changed. The world has changed, but our God has not. But as the world has changed, more doors are opening up. And what I am excited about this year is no longer do we have to just look and see that our world is comfortable and everything is great, but our world is realizing that, man, this place is not as good as we thought it was. Like, everything is on fire. What's going on? That all these leaders I followed aren't leading me on the right path, or this lifestyle I was promised isn't what I thought it was. And this is the opportunity for the church to step in and fill that void that they've tried to fill so long but haven't truly succeeded in. So here's how I want to close this out today, and I want to give you kind of 3 quick things of how in 2021 is Cross Church going to make Jesus known. How are we going to take this message to the world around us? How are we going to make an impact of the people around us in our community? How are we going to tell people the message, the good news, the greatness of Jesus Christ, that he came here for us to die for our sins, so we don't need to be bound to that any longer, but we can know something better? Well, first, I think it starts with we're going to make it known through a community touch. We've talked a lot about this, and one of our we say our mantra or our slogan or the heart of our church is that Cross Church cares, and we say it that we care. And we have We Care initiatives. For example, this past year, we got to do that in a lot of different ways. We got to expand our food pantry during kind of the height of our pandemic over our summer when there wasn't a lot of options. We got to give away a ton of food. Going into the holiday season, we got to give out Thanksgiving meals. And then going into Christmas, we were able to pack over 50 boxes that we sent kind of around our world through Operation Christmas Child. And then we gave over 200 toys to local kids in our city with Toys for Tots. And we've been able to partner kind of with our fire department, love on them, our police force, and all these different initiatives to show our community that we truly care about them and love them. And we're right now, you can clap. And we got to close the year and breaking ground in our most ambitious project yet with our garden outside, which, show up with a shovel and a rake on Saturday. It's going to be fantastic. We will be bringing a tractor, so don't be too discouraged by all the piles of rock. But we are going to you've seen change happen here. We're about to put about 17 trees out there. We're about to, put rock and spread that and wood chip all over. And we're building and going to be growing something that is another front door, another step to love our community, to embrace our community, and to bring people in and show some life on this dirt lot that's never been seen before. But you see, all this is part of a community touch, a part of a way to engage our community, to show our community that we love them, that it's not just about coming here, giving your money to a church, and you have no idea what we're doing, but it's about giving back and loving to our community in a great way. But you see, not only in 2021 are we going to have a community touch, but this one, and this is very relevant, and what we talk about going forward, is we're going to have an increased digital touch. You may notice as you walked in that things, I don't know if you're observant, maybe you didn't even notice, but we have more cameras around, that we're changing things, and we like to change things just for the sake of change sometimes, just to keep you on your toes so you're not comfortable. When you walk into church, you're like, what's that? But we're increasing not only the quality of our digital presence, but also the content we put out, because this is also another new first step. We get people who come into our church all the time, and I'm like, how'd you find us? They're like, online. I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, well, my name's Andrew. Like, yep, I've watched you online. I'm like, great, you came back, and you didn't think I was 12 years old online, or you did. And you're like, this is really weird. I got to see this young pastor. But they see us online most of the time before they ever step foot in our building. And you see, one of the ways we are doing is trying to put out more content, trying to increase that content, but the way that you can be part of that is to help share and invite and like and push that stuff out to your friends, because we live in a weird world where there's some things that you never get to see friends in person as much as you do online. And maybe you don't know what people are going through as much, but you get to invite, you get to love, you get to pass on messages of hope that will then lead to people coming into this room, that will lead to that love and discipleship in being God's church. But lastly, our community touch, our digital touch, all leads back to a personal touch. You see, how a church grows, how the kingdom ultimately grows, is through one-on-one relationship, through inviting and sharing the good news of Jesus. You see, after this, Jesus lived his life. He poured into his disciples. He loved them. And then what happened is he died on a cross, and they freaked out. But then he raised again, and he came back, and he said, hey, I got a job for you. Go tell everyone what you've just seen for the last 3 years. Go tell everyone who I am. Go tell everyone this hope, this God. And then the greatest movement our world has ever seen started. And you see, nothing will replace the love and the invitation and the personal sharing of us inviting our friends, of sharing the gospel with those people around us. And in 2021, our world needs to know Jesus like they never have before. But the question for us becomes, how is Cross Church going to play a part in that? And are you going to join us on that movement to start a revival in 2021? Let's pray.